I'm slowly building the sets for my next animation film. However, this set feels a bit dull, doesn't it? It's missing that magic, the Disney magic. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I go from this into this. Yeah, this is more like it. I'm liking the colors and lighting. We've got something here, I think. I think it's obvious from that render that the key to visually magical renders is lighting. We'll dive into lighting later because there are some other considerations which make Pixar films so visually magical. Let's dive into some shots and try to figure out why it's so appealing. If we take a look at Onward as an example, you'll notice something fascinating. Remove the characters and the environment looks somewhat realistic. But there's something a little off, in a good way. Pixar plays with the scales of everyday objects to make the world feel both familiar and whimsical. These cars look very functional, yet incredibly cute and compact. Pixar also seems to keep objects smooth and simple, with rounded edges. Look at this corridor scene in Soul. They try to avoid straight lines, like these ceiling grids. They have a playful bend to them. It's a realistic environment, but it's been tweaked a little to have that storybook feel. To capture this style, I went back to my assets and made some tweaks. I started by softening the shapes. A lot of these assets I downloaded from Blender Library and Sketchfab. For example, this bed was a great start, exactly what I was looking for, but I'm not liking the flat areas. So I added more edges and played with the scale to round it off. I also added some bevels to the corners to get rid of the sharpness. There are different ways to do this. I use Blender's modifiers to add bevels. Disclaimer, these are not tutorial videos, but more of a behind the scenes while I try to make my animation film. I will show you the techniques, but if you want to learn them further, I encourage you to check out these YouTubers. I'll put the links in the description below. Next, I added more geometry to the walls and used a soft brush to break up the rigid lines. It's a subtle change, but it makes everything feel more organic. Another thing that Pixar does brilliantly is adding imperfections to make objects feel lived in. Whether it's tiny scratches, dents, or grime, these imperfections give depth to their world. I use an add-on called Fluent Materializer to add these imperfections like scratches. It's a paid one, but I think it's worth it. The wall is too plain, so I added some dirt and grime. Pixar usually keeps objects smooth, so I should be careful and not try to make it hyper-realistic. Yet with the wear and tear, the scene is starting to come to life. Disney is a master of using color to evoke emotion and guide the viewer's experience. Think of Coco's vibrant colors or Frozen's cool icy tones. Each scene is deliberately color graded to enhance the story. So that's why in my film I decided to change from this yellow fluorescent lights to a blue moody scene. Having a wide variety of colors can be distracting, so I tend to stick to the same color of each. So these reds are the same, and so are these blues. Finally, onto the main event, lighting. Pixar films are lit in ways that are both cinematic and character-focused. Lighting can transform an average scene into something magical, but it's also where I struggle the most. That's why I always look for a reference image which is closest to my film in terms of the mood that I'm gunning for. This image is from Toy Story 4. I love the dark blues and how it's contrasted by this warm orange light. From this image, I try to figure out what lighting was used. There are some obvious sources of lighting, like the window and the lamp, but others are not so obvious. See the rim lighting on Rex to make him pop. There also appears to be some key light which is angled about 45 degrees on the side. This is also to make the characters stand out and separate them from the shadows. It's on the opposite side because usually the shadow side is filmed, as it makes for a far more interesting shot. I started off by killing all the lights in my scene except for the world HDR light. Then I slowly added lights one by one, starting with this angled key light first. I love when light comes in from the windows, but Blender struggles with this, so I have to fake the window light using a globo light that has a window stencil. I always mess around with globos in every scene because it creates a more interesting shot and it's also a bit more realistic. So when I added some globos through the window, I got some interesting shadows on the wall and also on the character, which is important as I want him to stand out. The audience's attention should be on the character. The rim light here was very effective in making the character pop. However, the light is not believable, so I added a practical bulb to show where the light source was coming from. Now it's believable. The character's face is also too dark, so I added some key lights to brighten the face and a further top light to add more light and draw the character out. Blocking light is as important as adding light, so I added a bunch of black panels with some transparency to cast shadows around the room. If we compare the images, the shadowy one is far more interesting. Final few adjustments to really bring the scene to life. It's all about the finer, small details. For instance, the windows. I liked how in Toy Story 4, the window had droplets which had some emission due to the street lights, so I added these onto my windows using a hair particle system. Finally, I added some foreground elements like this balloon and tray to add some depth. Also, an X-ray picture with some transparency to add to the story. Then a little bit of fog around the window area to enhance the lighting. So that's how I took a pretty dull environment and made it look a bit more Pixar-like and something that's a bit more interesting. I think it's all about finding the balance between photorealism and stylization, and then adding imperfections and obviously mastering the lighting. Yeah, let me know in the comments if you have any other tips, tricks, or hacks to get your renders looking amazing and more Pixar-like. That would be appreciated. Anywho, thanks for watching. Peace!